gamer.
You're in the sewer now, bitch!
So, this is something new for me. How's it going, everybody? I'm Tenkai Gamer and welcome back to the channel. In the past recency, I've been getting pretty big into death battle and versus debating. I'm what the public likes to refer to as a disgusting, pathetic power scaler. But hey, power scaling leads to matchups that I happen to really like. And with Death Battle's 10th season long over and season 11 coming out I don't know when, I'm taking this opportunity to talk about my most wanted matchups. By the way, this isn't going to be a ranking video, I'm just spitballing ideas here, but my most wanted matchup will be at the end, so maybe you should watch the whole video through, like, subscribe even. So for those who have been here, you know that I'm a Toku channel. So obviously, to ease things in, we're going to start off with the Toku matchup. And what better way than with one of the most popular ones, Captain America versus Kamen Rider Ichigo. Both were originally normal guys who were experimented on, turning them into patriotic super soldiers, and which led up to them kickstarting famous superhero franchises, with Captain America being the first Avenger and Ichigo being the first Kamen Rider. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind this will be the first non-Power Rangers Toku matchup we see on the show. Not only did they do a death battle cast on it which got a lot of traction when it was announced, but Cap is a character who didn't really get represented well in his original episode. Plus Ichigo is the obvious choice to introduce Kamen Rider to the series. While it's not my favorite Rider matchup, it is definitely one of the most needed in my opinion. Plus with how thematic it is and the potential for dynamics and fight choreography, this could end up being cooler than I think. Despite not talking about them as much recently, I still play video games a lot, especially platformers. You're going to see a lot of matchups revolving around them here in this video, with this next matchup including one of my favorites of the genre, Rayman vs Klonoa. Both are platformer mascots from the PS1 era who are based around dreams and fight dark nightmarish creatures. Both utilize long-range attacks in combat and use something on their heads for their ability to glide, with Rayman using his hair and Klonoa using his ears. For those who don't know, I'm a massive Rayman fan. Legends is tied with Super Smash Bros. Brawl as my favorite video game ever. While I don't know much about Klonoa, it does seem like a really cool franchise to me. While I'm starting to see people fall out of this matchup and pit them against other opponents, I still stand by the fact that this is the best for both. Like with Cap and Ichigo, the connection and theming are really good, plus I think the dynamic between these two would be hilarious. From what I hear, Klonoa is meant to be a Mario and Kirby type of character, being this beacon of positivity and wonder in his universe. And while Rayman is pretty similar to that, I think leaning into the childish and brash nature from his more modern games would be great for Klonoa to bounce off of. As for who wins, well, I don't think that's a stomp. Rayman did punch the magician Tinsies into another galaxy, whereas Klonoa's more broken feats come from the manga, which I don't think is canon. So yeah, base Rayman dub, would love to see it at some point. Dragon Ball is one of the most prominent franchises on the show, to the point where you think people will want to see it again for a while. But there's so many matchups that can be utilized. Also due to the fact that they only really use Saiyans on the show, there's a couple others, but still. So normally, you would think I would choose a non-Saiyan matchup for this list, right? And I would. Until I remembered how popular Gohan vs Ultraman Zero was. Both are the sons of famous Japanese alien heroes who were trained at a very young age by Alice from separate planets to become elite warriors, eventually realizing their true potential after defeating a villain no one else could. Cell for Gohan and Belial for Zero. Gohan is definitely a character I'm going to appreciate more over time. His dynamic with Piccolo is a series highlight, and his beast form is an insanely raw transformation. Plus Zero is just a badass Ultra. He's the face of the new generation, and he plays an integral part of some of my favorite seasons in the franchise. Some are off-put by this match due to how contrasting their personalities are, with Gohan being more level-headed compared to Zero who's incredibly cocky and boisterous, but that's what makes it interesting, I think. Maybe at the start of the fight you can utilize Leto, have Gohan in his Saiyaman outfit, confront him wondering why a human such as himself has a high power level, don't ask how that works, only for Zero to take over, brushing him off abruptly then booking it, causing the conflict. Despite both of them being pretty similar power-wise, I do think Gohan would eventually come out as the victor. I think he's dealt with crazier stuff, plus overall he's just way smarter than Zero, though Zero may hold the battle IQ advantage against him, so who knows what's possible. You guys want to know what series needs more representation on Death Battle? Well, Marvel of course. Archie Knuckles vs Juggernaut. Two hot-headed comic book characters with overwhelming strength and connections to mystical gemstones, the Master Emeralds for Knuckles and the Crimson Gem of Sidorak for Juggernaut. I'll admit, I'm pretty one-sided with this matchup. Knuckles is easily my favorite Sonic character, and despite me liking his original episode and thinking Sonic characters are a little overhyped in versus debates, I don't think he should have lost his fight against DK. As for Juggernaut, while I'm not a huge fan of his character, he is still someone I would love to see on the show. Not only does he rival in strength, but his sheer invulnerability and destructivity would make this fight go crazy. Again, if you couldn't tell, I'm betting on Knuckles winning this fight. Not only are we using the Archie version for this, which gives him way better powers and forms to work with, but he holds the advantage in both speed and experience. Not to mention Juggernaut does have a win con going against him considering Sidorak is a sentient being who he does not get along with, therefore his abilities are way less reliable compared to Knuckles. Unfortunately, as much as I want this fight, I don't think they're going to do it this season. This year is basically looking to be Shadow's year with the third movie and Generations remaster coming out, so they'll probably use him again for something instead of Knuckles. Kirby has had an amazing track record on Death Battle. His episode with Boo, despite the characterization, was still good for an early episode, whereas Wario vs. DDD was not only the best Kirby episode, but the best Mario episode too, at least in my opinion. So if they continue this streak of good episodes, then I'm hyping up MegaMan.EXE vs. Zero to be next. Both are very popular characters coming from iconic platformer franchises, acting as the mentors, sometimes rival to the series protagonists, Kirby and X respectively. Both are known for utilizing swordsmanship to fight rather than mimicking abilities like said protagonists, fighting off against evil versions of themselves and being notoriously broken in crossover fighting games. I'm aware this matchup is very divisive in the community. People have criticisms going against this and have the other matchup ideas for these two, but MegaMan.EXE absolutely deserves to be on Death Battle. He's my favorite of the Kirby franchise. God, how many times am I going to say favorite in this video? And he's quite literally known for being the most skilled warrior in this universe. Plus, this is the most interesting matchup by a long shot. Like, yeah, Riku from Kingdom Hearts is fine, but he has plenty of other matchups to work with. Schedule from Puyo Puyo sounds really boring, and Better Way Bill is only curated by the connections. And similar things can be said with Zero. His episode with Metal Sonic is considered one of the worst in the series, and considering his popularity, I think he deserves a second chance. And also, no, his matchups aren't as interesting as MegaMan.EXE in my opinion. Shadow doesn't need a fourth episode on the show, and the Quantum Ranger, similar to Riku, I think is good, but again, he also has other opponents to work with. Another critique people have is believing that this is a stomp in MegaMan.EXE's favor, and while I do think he wins, Zero can still hold his own in a fight against him, which would make this really good. He has a better arsenal of weapons and powers he can pull from, plus there's the Mega Man Zero games which were barely utilized in his fight with Metal Sonic. So let's make this matchup happen, boys. Alright, I wasn't expecting to be talking about 3 Marvel matchups when recording this, but yeah. Thankfully, this might be my last one, since this is my most wanted Marvel matchup, and it's a very popular one, so let's talk about it. Ghost Rider vs. Spawn would be insanely raw as an episode. Like Cap and Ichigo, both are just regular guys who have tragedies revolving around death made to deal with a satanic overlord, Mephisto and Mount Bolger respectively, only for it to backfire and become hell-based anti-heroes are infused with demonic entities. Zero throws for Ghost Rider and Case of Letho for Spawn. Now what makes me want this matchup, you might ask? Well, the answer is quite simple. I just like hell-based characters, and this would appeal to that on so many levels. Yes, I'm aware Ghost Rider already had an episode against Lobo not too long ago, and that was really good, but I wouldn't say it's the best matchup for either of them, plus I think you can do a lot more with Johnny. Spawn definitely needs to come back as well. His episode against Kratos was not only old, but really anticlimactic, and since Kratos is getting hyped up for a comeback against Asura, why not the same for Spawn? As for who I think wins, I genuinely think this could go either way. I mean, they're both insanely broken and have taken down celestial beings, including the devils that swindled them in the first place. People say Ghost Rider wins thanks to Zerathos and Spawn's powers being more limited, but again, I like both these characters, so if Spawn took the dub, I wouldn't be against that either. Now we move on from my most wanted Marvel matchup to my most wanted DC matchup. Kyle Rayner vs. Simone the Digger. So, I've been watching Gurren Lagann recently, and it's been really fucking amazing. So much to the point where now it's one of my most wanted franchises to appear on Death Battle, and this is the most obvious matchup to kickstart that with. Say what you want about DC fatigue, but there's a reason why this matchup is gaining so much traction. The fight potential between these two is insane due to how strong and versatile they are. Will the Drill is by far the most popular fan-made score for Death Battle, shouts to Brendan Yates for that. And the idea of this turning into a cosmic mech fight screams nothing but finale worthy to me. Not to mention, after how unpopular Hal vs. Ben was, we need another Green Lantern episode to redeem them. And this is really the only other idea I like, so. Similarly to Ghost Rider vs. Spawn, I don't really care who wins this since I like both characters. But also, I don't really think there's a general consensus on who wins. I've been getting different answers from multiple people, so throw that in as another reason why this episode might be super well received. Alright, so we just discussed a matchup revolving around Hellfire and magic, as well as one revolving around science fiction. So let's talk about one that not only utilizes both of these elements, but as well as being one of my favorites even of this video. So let's talk about Bowser vs. Eggman and why I think it's an awesome matchup. Now at first glance you may be thinking, oh, is this Mario vs. Sonic again, but with their villains? And yes, that is true, but there's a lot more going on here than just that. They're both incredibly threatening antagonists within their worlds, but can also act as comic relief thanks to their arrogance. They both have huge-ass armies at their disposal, which is something we rarely see on Death Battle. One is more based around magic, whereas the other is all about science and technology, so you got that clash going. And they're both characters that are just desperately wanted and needed for a comeback. Bowser was snubbed in his fight against Ganon. Despite them clearly showing he had the better feats, he got demolished solely because dumber and the holy weapon rule. Even though that's what the Power Stars are, by the way. Eggman was kind of snubbed against Wily too, since he has way higher scaling to the point where it shouldn't constitute a tie or whatever you want to call it. But either way, that episode is old now, and there's a lot more to do with Eggman. I'm siding with Bowser on winning this fight, since, you know, magic and everything, but also because he has a lot of really insane feats and transformations to the point where I can't even see Eggman's stronger machines like Metal Sonic or Egg Wizard being much help here. Before we move on, however, I'm going to make a prediction. I think this will be their 200th episode. Not only is it insanely popular amongst the community, probably the most wanted match for both Mario and Sonic respectively, but it would also make a good sequel episode for episode 100 since that was the Mario vs. Sonic rematch. Even if I'm inevitably wrong, I'm still going to hold out hope for this. So remember earlier in the video when I said Cat vs. Ichigo was my most wanted rider matchup? Well, Kamen Rider Eggman vs. MegaMan.EXE. Passionate yet naive protagonists who after a tragic event from childhood were bonded with digital entities and became titular heroes of their respective franchises, who just so happen to be based around video games. Eggman is by far my favorite season of Kamen Rider, and Battle Network is by far my favorite iteration of Mega Man. So when this idea was presented to me, there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to be an advocate for it. I didn't delve too far into the connections, I admit, because they are a bit spoilerly, but one thing I can talk about is the amazing fight potential here. And let me tell you, if you're into characters that have form changes, not only these two characters, but these two franchises are your bread and butter. Eggman's forms would work as a hierarchy, so each form he would use would make him stronger in some way, having his Mighty Action form act as his base, his Dragonite form which allows him to fly and shoot fighter, his Mighty Brothers form which splits him apart into two different people, his Maximum Gamer form which turns him into a giant hulking mech, and of course, his almighty final form, Hyper Muteki Gamer, which is just Star Mario and Super Sonic combined into one. And that doesn't even scratch the surface of EXE's alternate forms. All the different elements, armors, style changes, double souls, the cross system, the beast forms, even his own fucking dark form that's so powerful and so chaotic that it warrants its own death battle episode. Like, I can't even get into who wins this one as they both have so many cool form changes and so many bullshit feats, words can't describe how sick of a battle this would be. Easily standing as my favorite one to talk about thus far. But I digress. We still got many more matchups to go. Now we move on to a matchup I didn't really care for at first, mostly because I didn't care for one of these franchises. However, the more I thought about it, the more I realized this could be an awesome episode. That being Jaden, the Red Samurai Ranger versus Roy from Fire Emblem. Young noble swordsmen who take up their family's mantle of lordship, becoming leaders to a heroic team of warriors who have been fighting for generations, the Samurai Rangers for Jaden and the Farian Army for Roy. Along with their masterclass swordsmanship, they also have the power to control fire and are symbolized around lions in some way, with Roy being known as a young lion and Jaden having his main Zord be a lion. Similarly to Eggman, Shinkenger is easily my favorite season of Super Sentai, with Takeru being my favorite character from that show. And yes, I know I'm referring to Jaden for this, but the viewers here will probably recognize him better, and we need a Power Rangers character on the show that isn't just Mighty Morphin. But why am I pitting him against a character from Fire Emblem, a franchise I know next to nothing about outside of Smash? I just think they're the best matchups for each other. I mean, when you look at the opponents for both Jaden and Roy, they go for a similar approach, but the connections and thematics aren't quite as good. Not to mention, this works great as a more grounded fight, which I know people want more of. Think about it, the idea of a samurai knight clashing their swords at one another, with fire and explosions being spread all over the place, causing the location to become more and more hectic and devastating. It'd kind of be like Shredder vs. Silver Samurai all over again, but with much more precision and strategy involved, not to mention raw power. For this one, I'm going to be talking about a much more classic matchup. However, in recent times it is very, very mixed amongst the public. Ash vs. Yugi. Now a lot of you guys don't like this matchup, and I can understand why. Pokemon battles and duel monsters do work completely differently, and there's a ton of people that think it's a massive stomp in Yugi's favor. However, that doesn't really stop any other Yu-Gi-Oh! Vs. Pokemon matchups from getting popular. Plus, Ash has a wide variety of Pokemon from every region. Almost every region, I should say. And while not having any legendaries on him, he still has pretty broken scaling thanks to either fighting them or fighting trainers that are way stronger than them. And yes, I know this is the aspect people say carries this matchup, but come on, this is literally the most iconic anime rivalry. Plus, this would just be a really cool summoner battle. And I don't think any of their other opponents really have that same potential, so... I digress, I still side with Yugi winning. I don't think his scaling is that much different from Ash's, but he has way more hacks, and I think that'll be what gives him the win. But like I said, this is just me talking about matchups I like. And for Yugi, as well as Ash, I think they have the most potential here. A little bit of lore dump for you guys, but one of the first franchises I ever hyperfixated on was TMNT. And my favorite character from that franchise is Raphael. But a lot of his solo matchups just aren't that interesting, especially compared to his brothers. It took me a while to find a somewhat thematic matchup for him, since he is one of my favorite characters just in fiction. But after some digging, I think I finally found the one. Raphael versus Inosuke from Demon Slayer. The wild, hot-headed, animalistic members of their respective martial arts teams, standing out due to their berserker fighting styles and dual-bladed weapons. While I haven't watched a lot of Demon Slayer, I know it's in a slump right now, so they'll probably not do a matchup like this anytime soon. I still really like Inosuke, he's just funny. Now this is another matchup where I'm biased because people say Raph wins, but I want to go into why I think he wins, because it does also cover the fight and banter potential this matchup has. Now, I know Raph is known for running into situations without thinking, but think about what Raphael is. He's a ninja. Ninjas are known for being stealthy and fast and more trying to outsmart their opponents. Also, he's a giant-ass mutant turtle. And Inosuke is definitely going to confuse Raph for a demon, maybe some kind of kappa, and obviously try to kill him. And for the most part, when dealing with other aggressive opponents like Casey Jones, Raph usually tends to be the one to try to calm them down. So I think the beginning of this fight would focus on Raph trying to dodge Inosuke's attacks rather than engaging, while at the same time, gradually getting more and more pissed off. You can throw in a couple quips to distract Inosuke, throw in a couple hits as well, before Raph just says fuck it and lands the killing blow while Inosuke has his guard down. Like I said, I doubt this will be the next matchup for either series, but considering how dirty the trolls have been done in Death Battle, I think this episode could be a good redeeming point for them. So, after Jason vs. Michael, the demand for horror movie characters on Death Battle has been at an all-time high. The most requested matchup I've seen besides that one is Freddy vs. Pennywise. However, I'm not going to be talking about that one for this video. I still like the matchup and want it, but there is another that catches my interest better. That being Ash Williams vs. Herbert West. Both come from horror movie trilogies that were inspired from H.P. Lovecraft, acting as the protagonists who face off against undead monsters that come to life due to their own reckless actions, with Ash summoning demons with the Necronomicon and Herbert reviving the dead with his reagent. To put it simple, this matchup would just be fucking rad. Evil Dead 2 is one of my all-time favorite movies, and I enjoy the franchise as a whole. Plus the reanimated movies are super underrated, they don't get talked about as much as I think they should. As for the fight itself, however, I think this has the potential to have the perfect blend of comedy and horror. Say what you will about how goofy their movies became later on, but those first entries are pretty fucking dark, to the point where I can see this inspiring the tone for the fight, making for one of the creepiest and most surreal episodes we could have yet. Also, you want to talk about banner potential, these guys have 3 crossovers for a reason, the dynamic here would be amazing. Ash would already fill up the screen with his brash and arrogant nature, so him having to play off of Herbert, who is such a weird, egotistical tight-ass, comedy. Also, for more hilarity, both of their arsenals can go against them pretty easily. The spirits that Ash faces constantly fuck with him all the time, not to mention the reanimated bodies that Herbert makes will not hesitate to attack him due to how mindless and brutal they are. I can't really talk about who I think wins since I would just be reciting what Galaxy Video said in his horror movie matchups video. So if you want, you can go and check him out, I'll link his video in the description below. When going into this video, I want to think about what Mario matchup I could talk about besides just Bowser vs. Eggman, since it is one of my favorite franchises and that idea is super obvious. It took me some time to think about what could really fit here, but while I was watching a certain show, I came up with a matchup on the spot that I think could be pretty interesting. Mario and Luigi vs. Ultraman Rosso and Ultraman Blue. 2 brothers who live seemingly ordinary lives until something unexpected and bizarre happens, causing them to be thrusted into a situation that ends up making them heroes, with Mario and Luigi being transported to the Mushroom Kingdom after a botched plumbing job, and Katsumi and Isami getting their ultra powers after saving a kid from a giant kaiju. Call this recency bias because I did just come up with the idea like the day before recording this, but this might be my most wanted 2v2 death battle. Mario and Luigi are my all-time favorite video game duo. Call me basic, I don't care. And Rube is an amazing show that hits right in the feels. Not sponsored, but it's on YouTube, give it a watch, trust me. I know the actual fighting might be a little weird due to the size difference. It's possible, but you'd have to go into the logistics like whether or not Rosso Blue can downsize or what limits do Mario and Luigi get with their giant powers, etc, etc. But I just want to see these characters interact. They're so similar yet so different at the same time. I'm just imagining Mario and Katsumi fighting fire with fire, then cutting to Isami recklessly charging at Luigi, who's just freaking out over the idea of having to fight giant silver aliens. Also, think about the coolness factor. The brothers fusing together in a room, ready to face off agast Streamy Luigi, only for him to throw Mario, piloting the Star Diver towards them, all while they're about to shoot out their giant beam of light. There's your climax already. So yeah, let's see if anyone else sees the vision here and wants to advocate for this matchup. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Now this next matchup is going to be harder to explain, if only because of my convoluted thoughts on it. So let's talk about Alucard vs. Dante. 2 half-human protagonists who fight off against a species of monsters that just so happen to make up their other halves, vampires and demons respectively. While their mothers were just regular humans, their fathers just so happen to be the most powerful antagonists of their respective franchises, in being Dracula and Sparta. Now, what I'm talking about in this being hard to explain is that I don't think this is the best match for either of them, but it is my favorite for both. And that's due to their actual best matchups having problems for me. D stumps the massive shit out of Alucard, and considering that I like Alucard better, I'm not really super into that. Kratos and Dante is really cool, however Asura exists, and seeing how he was on both Champions bouts and almost won the last one, it's been spoken too much into existence. That's going to be what they're going to do for Kratos. This, however, works perfectly. It's thematic, it's debatable, the connections are really good. It'd be great to see Dante return with all his new abilities after 5, along with having more Castlevania representation. The only thing I'm worried about is a lot of the more basic action. They have loads of different powers and abilities to work with, which is cool, but again, Alucard is mainly a sword fighter. Dante is too, but he's more known for using his guns. So I feel like that dynamic might be a little bit eh. Regardless of that though, the actual fighting still has loads of potential to work with. And also one thing I haven't brought up yet is the track we could get from this. Both DMC and Castlevania have top tier soundtracks, so combining both elements for an actual battle song would be sick as fuck. Also, not to mention, Symphony of the Devil, hardest idea for a track name I've ever heard in my life. Well, this is it. The final point of the video. My most wanted matchup. Due to the appealing thematics of it, the overwhelming powerful fighting we could get, and just overall my personal connection to both franchises, is Lord Drakkon vs. Ohma. The dark timeline where these respective universes are ruled over by a demonic almighty overlord that just so happens to be the future versions of two legendary tokusatsu heroes, in being Tomei Oliver, the first 6 Power Ranger, and Sogo Takiwa, the last Heisei Kamen Rider. And cut to my hypocrisy when I said I wanted non-Mighty Morphin episodes and that XA vs. EXE was my most wanted for Rider. Anyways, going into more detail here, power-wise, these two are basically just their respective franchises incarnate into one. They can obtain the abilities of any Ranger and Rider that exist. And like I said at the beginning, I'm a Toku guy, so obviously that aspect really works for me. Also, call me a freak, but I just like demons and I like kings. And what does Ohma translate to? Demon King. He's literally called the Demon King in Zio. And I know they're not meant to be literal demons, but it's that title, it's that added aesthetic that makes this a lot more appealing to me. Plus, considering that they're villains, they're much more willing to go all out and be brutal for a fight like this. While this matchup is insanely popular in the death battle community, a lot of other Toku fans write this off as a stomp for Ohma, but it's really not. Not saying whether or not Drakkon beats him, but there's loads of reality warping hacks and feats that people like to gloss over. Hell, I could argue you could even give him some Sentai abilities, considering that they tried adapting certain teams for Megaforce in the comics. But in terms of how useful they were in Power Rangers, I don't know how useful they might be. Again, I know we're more likely going to see Cap vs. Ichigo over this, but compared to all the other matchups I've talked about in this video, this is the one I want to see Death Battle do the most. Hell, this is a matchup I want to see any Versus show try to tackle. It's a cool matchup and I love both of these characters a lot. But alas, and until then, I, and hopefully most of you, will continue to hype on this matchup. That took way longer than I expected, but still had fun making this video. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Follow me on all the things, make sure to like, subscribe. Leave a comment if you like these Death Battle videos and if I should just make more, or if this should just be a one and done thing. But anyways, again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.